Let's see.
It didn't ask me to accept, but it just said that it was recording.
Okay, cool. All right, this is our first NHexit podcast, and this is
Yay!
Russell, and I'm calling Dave, and this will be our first one. So I'm planning on making these like a half hour long.
Yeah.
That way it'll be nice and short for people. And if anybody else wants to join one of these in the future, I can record them. So any of our NHexit people that want to be on here, just contact me on Facebook or on the website, nhexit.org, or Dave or I somehow. And then we're also going to make a list of people that are NHexiters who are willing to go on other people's podcasts. So that should do the trick. So, Dave, did you have anything you wanted to say the first time?
The first time about what exactly?
Doesn't matter.
Oh, well, obviously we'd be talking about secession, and more specifically New Hampshire secession, which is one of those things that, it doesn't get enough publicity. We had an event in 2016 where, we just, showed up a dozen or so people in front of a federal building. We got all over the national and international news just because we did it at the right time, right? The week of Brexit.
Mm-hmm. And now I am noticing an uptick in secession talk, you know, like before the election amongst Democrats that were afraid they were going to get, bamboozled out of the, electoral college again, like California exit people.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit uptick. And then also keeping track of, Scottish guys are wanting to split from the English and stuff like
Right. And of course, we want to split from the United States, or at least we want to have a strong secession movement, because we've seen what's happened in Scotland and what's happened in Quebec, and how secession and Brexit, and how secession has been sort of rehabilitated from the traditional association in America of secession with the Confederacy. So we
that.
don't
Yeah.
have now all this new stuff is sort of sucked all the air out of the room, all the air out of the Confederate room, I guess you could say. And now secession is people think secession, they think Brexit, right? So that was the really beneficial thing about Brexit for us, in addition to publicity.
Yeah, and New Hampshire has that advantage over, say, South Carolina or Texas because, you know, our secession should fit more with guys like, the abolitionists that wanted to quit, right?
Yeah, there was a strong secession movement in the Northeast before the U.S. Civil War. They were trying to get out, and I sure wish they had succeeded. But now, I think to me, secession currently is something where you want to have a strong secession movement so that you have something you can wave against the federal government when it oversteps its bounds, something other than presidential elections, which, as we've just noticed, probably have some fraud in them. Probably are a little bit one size fits all, even if they don't have fraud in them. It's nice to have a release valve that we can start, filling up our secession tank, and it gets more and more full the nastier the government gets. And you don't have that problem so much in Scotland or Quebec. They don't have to worry about their federal governments coming in, or their imperial governments coming in and committing atrocities in their provinces, or arresting a lot of people unnecessarily, because those federal governments are afraid that if they do that, they'll push these people over all the way into secession. So that's the benefit of having a strong secession movement, even if you don't get secession.
Hmm. Yeah. Now I'm getting some. I've been tracking some of the Alberta people and stuff. They're getting tired of things in Canada around mask mandates and shutdowns.
Yeah, well, and imagine how much less cruel the Canadian government, the central Canadian government, generally is than the federal government. But even they can be cruel.
Mm. Yeah. Well, and partly for me, part of the reason to secede from the U.S. is not being part of their wars in other parts of the world.
Right.
That's a unique thing that we have.
And that's the right word. Their wars, not our wars.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that we needed to say to, some people don't even know about NHexit. When did it start? At Brexit?
Yeah, pretty much. I was just, trying to take advantage of the fact that we were going to have a fairly large number of people driving through Manchester on a certain day in August. Um, and can I do a protest? What can we protest as long as there's all these people driving through? They may be a little tired because they're coming back from Porkfest, but some of them are going to want to go to a protest. Some of them will just do it any chance they get. So let's have a protest. I looked around the news and thought, what's going on right now? Maybe Brexit is maybe exit, maybe secession is a good thing. Maybe we should go to a federal building and protest in favor of secession. But we didn't have a URL or anything, and NHexit as a concept didn't exist. But I saw it on a Twitter feed. Someone had posted the word NHexit because the Brexit was going on. Everyone was talking about Brexit. I thought, oh, that's what we do. We make this about NHexit, and we create a new concept and name. We take advantage of the publicity surrounding Brexit, and it did work. We were probably in about 50 or 60 media outlets, including the mainstreams that you've heard of, like I don't remember all of them, but NBC and CBS and CNN and stuff like that. I think most of them, well, I wouldn't say most of the mainstream media covered it, but lots of them did.
Mm-hmm. And did they film it, or who actually?
A gal from the local TV station came out and filmed it. I filmed it, and also a print reporter came out.
Okay. And so you saw the NHexit, somebody else posted it, but you kind of came up with the idea and, hey, let's have a group.
I came up with the idea of just adding a .com to it. Basically, I think I saw the idea posted by Emily Sandblade, who's a Free Stater in New Hampshire. I think I saw her post something on Twitter or Facebook about it.
Yeah, and even now, Texit is a big group, and Calexit. So a lot of people are using that same terminology. So that makes
sense. That's right. However, over the last 4 years, I don't like Donald Trump at all, but you've got to admit he didn't really do things that made it easy to push secession, right? He didn't give us a lot of ammo, other than the fact that he was just a blowhard and a jerk. He didn't do a lot of things in terms of, I didn't have some new restriction that I had to live under because of Trump over that 4-year period. Immigrants did. And that was wrong. But it was just he didn't do the kinds of things that really get secessionists riled up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. And right now with the shutdowns, that's not really coming from the federal government. That's particular to states. But then that's another reason to make your state better.
Yeah, and the state would be better, without the federal government. But I do not know that New Hampshire would be all that much better in terms of its COVID regulations as a result of it. So we don't have perfect storm right now. We're in a lull period, and the perfect storm will probably come when either Biden or Harris pushes too many buttons. And there's also an economic collapse at the same time. Those two things put together, that's what historically triggers secession in other countries.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of thing.
Because he's talking about having a nationwide mask mandate, a nationwide lockdown. He's hiring all these people, according to Ron Paul, who are they're basically the Iraq War people and the Libya War people. How well did those work out? They wanted to go on another grand tour, I think, and so that's going to cause additional angst and unrest and problems in the U.S. that will, again, make some people more comfortable with the idea of their state being a separate country from it.
Yeah, I could see that. Now, who else, what other group should we mention that NHexit is connected to?
Well, I'm a Free Stater. I moved to New Hampshire for more freedom as part of an organization called the Free State Project. which is neutral on the question of secession, but I would say probably 2/3 or 3/4 of free staters are secessionists.
Yeah, and we have groups like the New Hampshire Independence. Is that the foundation, or what are they called? What are they called?
Yeah, they preceded us. In fact, I think I was planning a protest for them, for the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence. I think I was going to do it like that at first, and then until I heard this concept, until I heard the Emily Sandblade promote the word NHexit. Again, I think it was Emily. I'm not positive that's who it was, but it definitely didn't. I was not the originator of the word NHexit.
Yeah. Yeah, and so one of the groups that we are always posting whatever links they have is nhindependence.org.
So I own NHexit.com, and you have NHexit.org, which gives us a little degree of I guess decentralization because the two are different.
Yeah, and then we have all the social media that goes along with it, and we also follow things like the 10th Amendment Center and other secession movements. But those are the real big ones that I can think of that, are very closely connected to us.
Right.
And also, I think you kind of started NHexit to be the more vocal or out on the streets, whereas the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence isn't like that. They do articles and consider themselves a think tank, right?
Maybe a little bit more, but we didn't really do that much on the streets. We did that demonstration. We did a few demonstrations in 2016, maybe early 2017. But I sensed that there was not a lot of what's the right word? There was not a lot of traction. We were going to quite a bit of effort and not really getting that much out of it. We just got publicity for that one first protest, basically, and follow up publicity that generated. But then there was just nothing else to do, it seemed like. So we created a name. We got a Facebook group going that was active and still is pretty active, and helped to mainstream the concept a little bit more than it had been mainstreamed before. And then there really wasn't much else to do except maintain the active Facebook group. And I've just been waiting for the opportunity. What is the right thing that we can do to push this to the next level? But it hasn't happened. There hasn't been an opportunity really over the last 4 years.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking that if we ever do more activities, we might be doing stuff that these other groups don't approve of. So don't blame them. It's our problem.
Yeah. I guess I don't know. You can't worry about too much about. You're never gonna please everyone.
But yeah, and this podcast will be put out on nhexit.org.
Okay.
And then I'll also put it on then I'll put it out on different social media too. So hopefully that's the way people will find it, and then we'll keep. So I will attempt to email interview or audio interview various people that are interested in secession. So I'm going to be contacting some people. I'll be asking them if they have any advice for our New Hampshire secession movement, or talk to other guys that are in other secession movements to find out how it's going for them.
Yeah, you might want to hook up with Marcus Evans. He loves to do these kinds of things, little pockets. I was on his podcast last year, and that is something. I guess I'm being a little unfair to myself and to us. We have been doing some things, over the last 4 years. The thing that I've been doing is quite a few calls to talk radio that bring up secession as a solution. Or mention NHexit or whatnot, or sometimes the talk radio shows just bring it up out of the blue and condemn me with it. they beat me over the head with it, and I'm like, thank you, that felt good.
So who is Marcus Evans?
He's the guy that runs CalExit, I think, or at least he used to.
Oh, runs CalExit. Okay.
Or at least he's prominent in that movement. And he's good at getting like mainstream publicity. That's something he's better at than I am. On the other hand, I don't remember his podcast having a lot of viewers or anything like that. But podcast is a podcast. It's a good conversation. Is good conversation.
Yeah. So it looks like he's with either CalExit or Yes California. Okay, so
those are the same thing, I think.
Yeah, I found him. So we'll either try to get him on ours or we'll be on his, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, between the two of us, we could talk. we could talk and never stop talking. So we don't even need a third person. But yeah, you're right. It's better to have additional, diverse voices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll just see who else. Now, because also the CalExit people, half the time they're frustrated with what Donald Trump is doing. They're also frustrated with some of the COVID stuff, and they're frustrated with what the Biden people might do.
Yeah, well, I think about it though. I guess secession, it's not something that happens while you've got a leader you like, right? It happens at the critical moment where you have your Hitler or you have your the worst guy you've ever had. Although that's probably an oversimplification. If you think about it, Estonian secession happened under Gorbachev, who was probably the best leader Russia has had since Peter the Great. But other secessions have come about as a result of systematic, or suddenly increasing government abuses.
Yeah. I also wouldn't say the Estonian people, they're doing it partly because they thought it was possible.
Right. And that's what Jason Soren says. He's the guy that's founded the Free State Project and got all these people moved to New Hampshire, inspired them to move to New Hampshire. He was saying that one of the key elements that we just don't have in New Hampshire is, a different linguistic heritage, a different, seriously different culture. We're actually not that different. We might like to pretend we are. We're not all that different from other states in the union. So the dialect is almost the same. The stores look the same. The culture is very similar. So we don't have that working for us. But again, we don't have to achieve secession. We just have to make them want secessionism to stop. Right? If they want it to stop, then they will either crack down on it, which will make it bigger, or they'll chill out a little bit and stop being fascists and communists, and that will help reduce the pressure for secession.
Yeah. The other thing I've seen is some of the leftists and some of the Bernie bros are frustrated with what Biden is talking about already.
Yeah.
Because they're and
it's the Democratic establishment, the most authoritarian, most established deep state wing of the Democrat Party that appears to be taking over, and that is going to trigger some kind of backlash.
Yeah. And any of these groups that we can meet that are willing to split up without having to fight, that's the good thing. If we don't have to shoot each other just because we disagree.
Right. Yeah, and they mostly did in the Soviet Union. They haven't really at all in Scotland versus London, and there's been almost no violence in Quebec versus the central government of Canada. These are the models to some extent that we should be looking toward.
Yeah, and what's the latest in Spain versus Catalonia?
That one's more. I don't know what's been going on over the last few months, but that one is more kind of middle of the road. The Spanish government has been a little bit fascistic, but they haven't been actually killing a lot of people. They've been, drop kicking people some, which is probably not real pleasant, and they've been, stopping elections from happening and stuff like that. And the Barcelona folks. What is it? Caledonia? Is that right? Am I saying that right?
I think so.
Well, anyway, they've been talking about taking a sort of more of a Slovenian path to independence, and that does involve shooting,
Yes.
but they haven't actually done it.
Yeah. I mean, up until now, they've been doing it through their system and things like that. Yeah. So, when I look it up here, it's Catalan Independence Movement is kind of the basic name.
Catalonia. Yeah, I keep wanting to call it Caledonia. Catalonia. Sorry. But as you can see, I'm not an expert on that one or anywhere close.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, we wanted to just get the first one out and give people a little rundown of how it got started and what we're connected to. When did you start thinking about secession?
Actually, that's ironic that you would ask. I wrote an article about it. Sort of. It wasn't an article. It was like a glorified web post on the Free State Project web forum. Back around 03. And I wrote a post against it. Let's just drop this issue. This is not going to help us. We got other stuff to do. Set this whole secession thing aside. It's a terrible idea.
What did you think was a better idea?
I don't know. Just get ourselves moved to New Hampshire and be powerful as best we can. Either by media or civil disobedience or winning office, and downsize the government. Right. That was what I was thinking. Those lines that I was thinking on.
I was probably thinking about, I was living in California and I was thinking about California secession, Republic of California stuff back in 96, 97. And also, of course, when you're in California, you're always talking about splitting California up into 3 or 4 parts because each part is so different from each other, So the Southern California people were always talking about getting rid of the Northern California people. And then I lived out in the desert outside of Southern California, outside of LA. And you always feel like the people in the middle of LA are voting to take my money.
Yep.
So I was already thinking about that. So when I first found the Free State Project, I was already a secession person.
Yeah.
So that definitely made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I guess I should point out one thing we didn't mention at the beginning of this. Most people probably know it, but the Free State Project, we were trying to get people to move to New Hampshire, libertarians basically to move to New Hampshire, people who just wanted to downsize the government. I'm not sure I made that clear at the start of the conversation.
Yeah. Well, and then, and I like the idea of any of these other states seceding. If we can get any of these governments smaller, it'll be better.
Well, yeah, imagine how awful it would be if Joe Biden were to try to secede from me. I mean, imagine how much that would hurt me, right? Or if Donald Trump were to stop being in my life, how would that hurt me?
Mm-hmm.
I don't get anything from them.
Yeah, and right now, if we have some states that want to be so different than other states, why can't we split up? Why should California and Texas be in the same country? Why should New Hampshire be in the same country as Florida? They could be separate, and then we'll see what happens. Then the migration issue is even more fun.
Yeah.
Right, because you're able to choose a whole different country.
Right.
So that gets very exciting to me.
And one thing that has happened in this crisis that sort of helps secessionists already is that, before the election even, is that they started to put up barriers between states to some extent. It didn't really take yet, but there are points in time where you had checkpoints on borders between one state and another. And they started to make it wow, the benefit of being in the United States is that we can travel freely. That's just about the only benefit that we and they're taking that away. So now there's no benefit to it at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. All right.
Yeah, they don't help us. They're a menace to us. I mean, they're the people that have that list. It's over 200,000 pages long, the federal government's list of things you're not allowed to do. So that just drops away. That 200,000 page list, really probably more like 2 million. No one can count it anymore. But it's this 200,000 rough or more page list of things you're not allowed to do. That falls off, like scales off your eyes, as soon as the federal government is not ruling you anymore.
Mm-hmm. Oh, another couple things that I've been thinking about this week, of course, is the other thing is getting away from the Federal Reserve, and you could have your own banking system and use sound money.
Yeah, you could, although that's usually that's considered a cause for invasion and bombing and
Well, that's what I'm
atrocities and stuff like that. That's what the federal government does to countries that try to do that usually.
Yeah, but that's the kind of thing you can do when you're a different country.
Yeah, do it anyway. And then yeah, if they want to pull a Slovenia on you and try to treat you the way Serbia treated Slovenia, then the whole world suddenly is on your side.
Yeah. All right. Well, I wanted to keep these to a half an hour, and we'll see how the recording goes. But I think this first one gets the ball rolling.
We earned our pay.
Okay.
But
All right.
thanks, Russell. I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, and I will turn off the recording now and put it in the can.
Okay. Till later.
Bye.
Bye.